So in 1966, the SCCA announced that they were going to recognize sedans for the national championship. Obviously, Ford wanted in on the action. They couldn't use the GT350 because the rules were such that you needed to have a four-seater. So their only option was the notchback. So Chuck Cantwell was the lead engineer on the GT350 for Shelby. All the guys sat down at Ford and Shelby, they had a meeting, they wanted to figure out how best to build this car. They decided that the cars would be Fords, they'd have all the Ford badging on them, but they'd all go to Shelby and he'd work his magic and build these things into race-winning cars. The rules for these Group II cars were a little bit more strict than when they built the GT350s. You had to have all four seats, you had to keep almost all of the original interior, had to have all the original glass on the car, every body panel had to be steel, you weren't allowed a hood scoop. They really wanted to keep these cars looking stock. The only kind of modification you could really see was this big notch here about the size of the license plate. That was to get more air to the oil cooler to make these cars live on these long races. Cantwell was no dummy though. He had read the rule book already for the GT350 and he reread it to build this car. As much as these things look stock, they basically took the GT350 underpinnings and attached almost everything to this car, making it an absolute weapon. You look under the hood here, it becomes obvious that this thing's a race car. So they started with stripping the car of everything they possibly could within the rules. They stuffed in there a Shelby 289 engine with an aluminum high-rise intake manifold and a Holley 4-barrel carb. You can see the Monte Carlo bar here. They gave this car a Borg-Warner close ratio 4-speed with a Detroit locker in it. They gave the car front-wheel disc brakes and heavy-duty rear drums. They gave the cars Coney shocks, and they put in a heavy-duty rad and oil cooler. So although these cars were sedans, they were still super important for the overall manufacturer's championship. Ford and Shelby built this specific car for Ken Miles. The plan was for Ken Miles to drive this thing and just dominate. That would never get to happen. Ken was killed testing the GT40J car before he could ever get a chance to run this thing. So a guy by the name of John McComb wanted one of these cars, but he was informed that they were all spoken for. So when Ken passed away, Cantwell actually called McComb and said, hey, a car's opened up, a seat's opened up for the season. Do you want to buy this car and run it? So McComb raced the car in 66 and 67. Although he probably didn't have the same performance that Ken would have had, he helped secure the overall championship for Ford in 66. McComb was based in Kansas and he was so excited to get this car, he drove straight to LA, bought the car, and within 2 weeks had his first 2 wins in the thing. So in the middle of the season in 67, McComb sold the car to a guy named Keith Thomas. Keith Thomas finished second to McComb in that season, but after finishing the 69 season, this car fell off the map. No one knew what was going on with the car for 28 years until it was unearthed in Texas, and the fellow who bought it brought it up to us for a full ground-up rotisserie restoration. The restoration on this car is just second to none. Every nut and bolt, the car was fully stripped down, beautiful paint, brought back to the exact livery of how the car ran back in the day. See the signatures under here, you've got Terry Dottie's signature, John McComb's signature, National Champion 67, and you've got Chuck Cantwell's signature. Pretty cool addition to the car. So off the engine here, you've got the tri-Y headers to a 2.5-inch exhaust. The exhaust dumps right out the side here, right in front of these American racing wheels. So in the final analysis, Shelby only produced 16 of these cars, making them an ultimate collectible for a Shelby or Ford enthusiast. So you sit in the car and the first thing that you notice is it's not a stock interior. I think, as the rules say, you had to keep almost everything in the interior, but I'd imagine as the season progressed and they saw how tech worked, I think they probably got a little bit more liberal with trying to pull some more weight out of this car. You put your hands on the wheel and right away you notice it's the GT350 steering wheel. You look at the cluster and it's straight out of a GT350. All the CS gauges are here. You've got your fuel pressure, you've got your temp, you've got your tach, you've got everything you need to go racing. You've got the horn on a toggle. Even though the rules were such that they really wanted to keep these cars as close to showroom stock as possible, that really just wasn't the case. They really built a race car here. pop the trunk here. Obviously the rules were such that you didn't need to keep the trunk stock here. Massive fuel tank, 32 liters, same as the R model. You've got your quick fueler there. You've got your fuel pump, and they relocated the battery in these things to the trunk here. You look at the quality of the restoration on this thing, and it's better than when it left the factory. So now we've got to ask ourselves, do you need a car like this? No. No one needs a 1 of 16 Group II Shelby Racer. No one needs a car like this. But do you want a car like this? Well, if you're at all into the history of American sports car racing, yeah, you definitely want a car like this.